Welcome, welcome, welcome. I decided to step outside today. We outside. And there is a short chapter, the second half of chapter 8. I wanted to go ahead and finish this before we go into the last section of this book, level 3. Oh, well, it might not be the last, but it's the next section of the book. And so, yeah, welcome. Welcome to Blood Moon Oracle. And the reading today, we are reading Spiritual Hygiene, written by Ayanla Bonzant, who is both spiritual teacher, minister, guide. She plays many different roles, wears many different hats. She is absolutely an inspiration and definitely called for such a time as this, I believe. And so, like, share, comment, subscribe. My name is Leticia, and this reading session is going to be a little bit different. As you can see, you won't necessarily see my face, but you will definitely hear my voice and maybe some illustrations through this reading because this is such a short chapter. This is the second half of chapter 8. Or was it 9? Let me see. Here's the second half of chapter, I believe it was 8. No, it was actually chapter 9. Restoring physical and emotional rhythm. The way we are stacking through this book, right? That's how good it is. I can't wait every week to get to the day where I can sit down and share the next chapter. It has been such a healing experience. And so I am going to go ahead and start. This is on page 192. If you do have the book, you can read along with me, or if you've already read this chapter, you may be familiar with what we're going to read about today. If you haven't got the book, you are welcome to go and buy it. I'm sure you can buy it online. You can stop at Barnes and Nobles and purchase the book as well. And it is called Spiritual Hygiene by Ayanla Bonzant. It is about $20 to $30. Please, 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 you will not be disappointed. And I think this is really something that is a helpful tool. And she mentions many times that this does not replace care. This does not replace therapy. This does not replace any counseling that you may be receiving, but this may be a tool that can help you in your processes that you're receiving. And so whatever arises here, maybe take that to your sessions and see if you can work through these things. And so page 192, let's get started. We always do start off with some type of meditation or prayer. I don't necessarily have one for this one, and so I'm just going to come off the head for this one and just ask Spirit to guide us. Allow us to come face to face with whatever it is that we need as we read through this short chapter. Spirit, fill us with everything that we need, even that which we don't even realize that we need. Provide a space for us to receive that. Even if we can't necessarily understand it right now, allow us to receive it and let it be amplified whenever it is needed or whenever we need to understand it. We are all here because we're looking for something. And I believe we come to the right place. The fact that we are seeking means that we are going to find what it is that we're looking for. Let something be said that would be healing, encouraging, inspiring, that will lead us to the next part of our journey, that will bring some clarity, and offer some level of significance for where we are in our walk on our path right now. We thank you. And we don't take any of this for granted. And so it is. Amen. Ashe, Ao. And so it is. All right. The bridge. Key teachings on level 1 and level 2. A descent into sacred alignment. And so there comes a moment on every path of inner evolution when deeper clarity calls for a fuller turning inward. The soul no longer seeks explanation. It seeks release. It seeks renewal. It seeks to live without the heaviness it has silently carried for too long. This is the work of spiritual hygiene that you have begun. This work is not an intellectual exercise. It is a spiritual imperative for the time and energy in which we live. This is the journey of uncovering, unburdening, and restoring the radiant alignment between your inner world and your sacred truth. It is a reclamation of your spiritual integrity, which is mental, emotional, physical, and energetic. In level 1, becoming conscious of what lives within. The first opening arrives gently, a whisper to pay attention, to notice what you've normalized, to notice the exhaustion behind the smile, the tension behind the spiritual talk, the unshed tears tucked into your everyday strength. Self-awareness is not a skill. It is a sacred doorway. It is a soul vow. I will not abandon what I see in myself. Yet awareness alone is incomplete without the courage to be real. To not just see it, but name it. This is the heart of self-honesty. And it, too, is sacred. It is the turning point where pretending ends and presence begins. You no longer aim to be perfect. You choose to be aligned. But truth often collides with the performances we've rehearsed for years. Emotional dishonesty, masked as politeness, responsibility, or spiritual maturity become exposed. It is not just what we say, it is what we deny ourselves permission to feel, to need, to question. From this, honesty blooms the awakening of our inner authority and energetic responsibility. The spiritual maturity that says, my inner state is not their burden to carry or their fault to fix. No more blaming, no more bypassing. This is the moment the soul stops outsourcing its power and chooses to steward its energy with intention. Still, as we begin to listen more deeply, we discover that not all the voices within us belong to the truth. Some belong to pain. Here is where the voices of trauma reveal themselves. Those familiar echoes that shape our survival strategies. Shame, blame, delay, avoidance, performance. They are not flaws, they are fragments. We learn that they were our wounded parts, doing the best that they could without a map for healing. And so, the soul begins to grieve. Not the kind of grief wrapped in silence, but the holy grief that tells the truth of what was lost, what mattered, what was missed. This was the invitation to grieve a form of spiritual clarity, to allow feeling to become a current of cleansing rather than a weight of sorrow. This is where the teaching becomes personal. I shared the story of my younger daughter, Nisa, beloved soul of my soul. She lived in this place for years, in the silent gap of unreleased grief. Her body bore what her mouth could not say. She smiled through the weight of unmet needs. She laughed through the ache of disappointment. And her body, faithful and wise, began to speak louder than her words. Diabetes was never just a diagnosis. It was the physical expression of stories she had no space to name. Nisa never gave herself permission to grieve. She didn't know how. And I could not teach her. The voices were too loud, the pain too entrenched. She continued pretending she was okay. She insisted on holding up the world, her broken and distorted world. She did not trust the messiness of her tears. She was afraid to breathe, to feel, to know. Her healing did not begin with answers. It began with pain, with sadness, with anger. Finally, her soul said, "No more." That is when her healing began, with a transition, her evolution, a change in form that she did not trust she could do in her body. It was her choice, and as sad as it makes me, I respect her choice. This is what grief does when it is allowed to flow. It softens the soul and begins the sacred repair. Forgiveness, then, becomes the next invitation. Not a demand, not a deadline, but a sacred threshold. Because we learn that what we will not forgive will continue to recreate, and not as a conscious process of creation. We create and recreate in the patterns we repeat, in the walls we build, in the fatigue we cannot explain. This is not punishment. It is feedback. It is the soul saying, there is still something here that wants to be felt, to be faced, and to be fixed, to be freed. Then in level 2, the descent into the body temple. If level 1 is the awakening of the inner temple, level 2 is the consecration of the body as sacred ground. This is where healing becomes embodied, where language gives way to sensation, where the story gives way to stillness. Your body is not a shell, it is an altar. It remembers. This is where we learn to descend into the wisdom stored in the cells, in the belly, the spine, the hips, in the places where breath gets shallow and motion becomes guarded. This is where we meet somatic memory, the body's holy language of truth. We noticed the physical expressions of what the soul had been managing silently. Jaw tightness from withheld anger, womb pain from inherited shame, shallow breath from years of suppression. These are not dysfunctions, they are sacred signals. We invite cleansing through movement as prayer, grounding, swaying, shaking, rocking, the natural rituals of restoration that we forgot we were allowed to do. Each gesture becomes a way back into the self. Each breath becomes a declaration of return. We learned to honor ritual, not as religion, but as regulation. It is a sacred rhythm that brings the body back into presence, a living ceremony that says, I will no longer abandon my nervous system in the name of productivity. In this descent, we grieve again. This level of grief is older, deeper, ancestral. The grief of lineage, the grief of women who were silenced, the grief of men who were never permitted to weep, the grief of children who adapted before they could speak. In this holy descent, the trauma once lodged in the body becomes visible, not just in the memories, but in chronic pain, the fatigue, the inflammation, the autoimmune flare-ups. These are not merely health conditions, they are also spiritual messages. This is where we reclaimed permission to feel, not as indulgence, but as responsibility. Emotional presence becomes our protest, our praise, our medicine. As we have done the work, we began to feel and flow differently. We let go of myth of constancy. We align with inner seasons. We listen to the wisdom of rest. We recognize that some days are for doing, but others are for being, shedding, softening, and that both are holy. This is the rhythm of the feminine, the rhythm of the soul. In that rhythm, we have given ourselves permission to remember that nothing real was ever lost. It was only waiting to be welcomed home. Reflection, a sacred integration. Take a breath, beloved. Let these words become more than concepts. Let them become companions. Remember, you have lost nothing. You are becoming whole again. You were never broken. You were and are in the process of a sacred transition, one which you prayed for, even when you did not know what it would look like or how it would feel. You are not too much. You are filled to the brim with what needs to be honored, released, or reshaped. So now, reflect gently. The first thing is, what unspoken truth is ready to be voiced? Not fixed, but to be freed. Number 2, where does your body still carry the weight of what your heart never had permission to name? Number 3, what if the fatigue isn't failure, but a signal of sacred over-functioning? Number 4, what new rhythm are you being called to honor? This journey is not about becoming someone new. It is about unlayering what you are not, releasing the false, the forced, and the forgotten until only what is true remains. As we move forward into level 3, allow these to be your soul affirmations. I am no longer holding what isn't mine. I am no longer silencing what wants to speak. I am no longer racing to be enough. I am no longer doing these things, but I am sacred, returning to itself. I am in rhythm. I am in alignment. I am a vessel of truth, a temple of light, and a well of rest. I am, and I declare these things over myself. Ayanla says, you are ready. You are remembered. Your healing has begun. Amen. Ashe, Ao, and so it is. I will see you in level 3.